This is Chapter 4. In this video, we'll discuss software concepts from the chapter. Software is a list of instructions that hardware follows. Software consists of programs written in a language like C++ or Java. The purpose of software is to use hardware to do things, from crunching numbers to watching videos to controlling the temperature in a household. Hardware is as good as a bag of rocks without software telling it what to do. There are many ways to categorize software. One way is by function. Software can be either in control of the system, or it can provide functionality for the user. Software that controls hardware is an operating system. An OS interfaces directly with hardware to perform mathematical and logical functions. Functional software is an application. End users will use a program like Excel to calculate different sales and profit figures for a company, or Outlook to get in touch with clients to set up appointments. Applications interface with the OS to use the hardware to make this happen. If Excel needs the processor to perform some mathematical calculations and show the results on the screen, the OS works with the CPU and monitor. Software can be categorized by where it is installed. Local installations, also referred to as on-premises installations, are applications that are installed on a local computer or server. These kinds of installations fall under the responsibility of the individual user or IT staff to maintain, upgrade, or uninstall. Sometimes local installations are synonymous with the term thick client application. Cloud installations are applications that are installed on someone else's server and accessed through the internet. Microsoft Office 365 is a perfect example of this. You can create documents or spreadsheets online through a web browser without installing the actual programs on your computer. Maintenance of cloud installations falls under the responsibility of the host. As a user of a cloud-based program, your only concern would be your internet connection. You never have to worry about any software patches or updates. Sometimes these are also referred to as thin client applications. Sometimes software is classified by its target audience. Horizontal market applications, sometimes just called horizontal applications, can work for many different types of companies and industries. These are some of the more popular names you might hear, like Microsoft Office or Adobe Photoshop. Vertical market applications work for a specific industry. Patterson makes software for dental offices. You'll never see Patterson software used by your average everyday consumer. Licensing is another way to categorize software. Software generally comes with a licensing agreement that lets you know what you're allowed to do with the software before you install it. Commercial software generally lets you use the software as is, and sometimes lets you install it on multiple computers. Some consumer-level antivirus programs allow for installation on 3 to 5 personal devices. In some cases, companies buy a site license so they can install a program on all the computers at their location. The site license may allow for installation on up to 500 computers, for example. Open source software, on the other hand, not only allows you to use the software as it was intended, but it also lets you modify the underlying programming code to add, change, or delete features to it. Commercial software is controlled by the company that created it, and because it's their intellectual property, they don't want people seeing how it works by analyzing the underlying code. In their end-user license agreements, you'll usually see something about not being allowed to decompile or reverse engineer the program. Open source software, on the other hand, isn't controlled by anyone. The open source community contributes to software development, and the software itself is free for anyone to use. From both a business and a consumer standpoint, both commercial and open source software has its appeal. Commercial software is supported by a company, so if anything ever goes wrong, that company will work hard to fix things. It's their reputation and financial well-being on the line, after all. Open source software, on the other hand, isn't supported by any one company, so if there's a problem with the program or if there's a feature request, there's no one to be held accountable for fixing the problem or adding a new feature. Cost is also a big difference between the two. Commercial software, with the support that comes with it, usually comes at a price, while open source software, as we mentioned earlier, is free for anyone to download and use. There's also the issue of version control. Windows 10, for example, is pretty much the same across the board, but Linux, because of the nature of open source software, has hundreds of versions or distributions available for use. Let's look at some different applications. Microsoft Windows would be a locally installed commercial operating system that everyone can use, thus making it a horizontal application. Other popular operating systems include Mac OS, used on Apple desktops and laptops, iOS, used in Apple iPhones, and Unix, which is generally used by engineers and other technical disciplines. We mentioned Linux. That's an example of a locally installed open source operating system. There are many different distributions of Linux, including Red Hat, Puppy, Mint, Debian, and Ubuntu. We mentioned Microsoft Office. Office 2019, or generally any version of Office with a year after it, is an example of a locally installed commercial application. Office 365 is an example of a cloud-based commercial application. OpenOffice is like Microsoft Office, but it is open source. Files aren't fully compatible between the two because of the way the two applications handle formatting and other details. We mentioned Patterson. That's an example of a locally installed commercial vertical market application. BD also makes software that works with the medical field and is pretty useless for non-medical professionals. It's important for us to understand what our options are in the vast world of software. Remember that as IT professionals, we don't just buy things just because. There always has to be a reason behind that purchase, and that reason is usually tied to improving business processes to increase the company's margin so they can stay competitive within their industry. And that's the software portion of Chapter 4.